So in this video, I'm going to be introducing you to some basic functions of Excel. I'm going to be showing you how you can sum different data using the SUMIF command. I'm going to show you how you can create a very simple column graph. I'm then going to show you how you can use the pivot table function to organize your data into tables. And from there, I'm going to show you how you can create a stacked column graph. So I'm on the data set that we've shared with you for you to practice on for this module, and I'm on the tab for waste. And this tab, the data here, we just have 3 columns. We have 2 text columns and 1 data column. And the 2 text columns, the first text column is for the type of waste. So I have paper, electrical, organic, glass, and other. Those are my types of waste. And what's happened is this survey has measured the different weights, different waste coming from different departments in an organisation. So the next column here is for department, and as you can see, I have 5 departments: HR, biosciences, computing, workshop, and canteen. And then I have the total waste per month in tonnes for each of these categories in each of these departments. So I want to be able to illustrate these data using some simple graphs. But there's not really much I can do with the data as it's presented here. If I just inserted a very simple graph, maybe I'll just do that just to show you why it's not very helpful if I just select all of that data, just to show you how you do a graph. If I go to insert and choose a recommended chart, I'm going to go for the very simple 2D columns. If I just do the standard stack chart, you see it doesn't really work. What I have here is that each of these separate data points here is given its own point on the graph. So I have all of the data for HR, all of the data in biosciences, all of the data in computing. And it would make more sense to have some kind of stacked bar, okay? So I could look at, for example, I think for this data, it would make more sense to group the waste by the type of waste and look how it differs in different departments. So look at how much paper waste there is in HR, biosciences, computing, in the workshop and the canteen, right? Which is not obviously, but this graph doesn't help us do that at all. That graph is not a good idea of a graph. You never want to have a graph where you've got repeated categories on the x-axis. So that graph doesn't help me. So I'm just going to get rid of that graph. I'm going to say that's a really bad idea. The first thing I'm going to do is a very simple analysis. I'm going to actually look at the total amounts of waste in each of these categories, in each of these 5 categories across all of the departments. And I'm going to use the very simple SUMIF command. But before I get started, I'm actually just going to calculate the total waste across all of these categories in all of these departments. So what I'm going to do here is just to show what I do there. I just, using my cursor, using my mouse, I select the entire column, and then I'm not on the home menu there. I just go up to the home menu. You see there's a function here called AutoSum. If I click on AutoSum, that inserts the sum at the bottom here. And if you look at when I put my cursor on that cell, you can see that the formula that Excel has inserted is sum, which is one of the most basic functions you can use in Excel. And it gives you the range over which that sum is going to be calculated from C2 to C26. So what the next thing I want to do is to be able to count all of the paper waste, all of the electrical waste, all of the organic waste, all of the glass waste, and all of the other waste across all of the 5 departments. So what I'm going to do down here is I'm just going to start off just by copying my types of waste. So I'm going to select those cells there. I'm going to copy that using Control-C, and then I'm just going to paste that down there. So I've got all of the different types of waste. And this time I'm going to use a function called SUMIF. When you are typing a function into Excel, you always need to start your command with either a plus sign or an equal sign. I think you're more likely to come across people telling you to use the equal signs, but for some reason I always use the plus sign. So the plus sign or the equal sign, it's the same. It tells Excel that you're using a function. So I'm going to do sum and if, right? And how the SUMIF works is that I tell Excel where I tell Excel to look up the sum cells for a certain property, and if that property holds, I then give it the range in which it needs to sum. So what I want to do is I want Excel to select all of the across this row here. I want to select, so if I go to column C here, for paper, I want to select all of the figures here where the corresponding text in column A is paper. So I want it to go and choose 39.8 there, 25.6 there, 14.3 there. So the way that SUMIF works is that for a command like this, I'm always going to have to open some parentheses. And as you can see, Excel very usefully actually tells me what I need to specify. So the first thing I need to do is specify the range. And this is the range that where I want Excel to do the lookup. So I want it to look up in column A. So from cell A to cell A26. And then I want to say what the criteria is. There's two ways of doing this. I could tell it to look for paper, okay? So I can tell it to look for paper, just paper. And the next, so that's the criteria I want it to look for. Then I need to tell Excel the data that I want to sum. So this time I select the data in column C. And then I can close my parentheses. I click on enter, and there we are. I have summed all of the occurrences in column C that are for paper waste. And then the next thing I want to be able to do is copy and paste this until all of, so I can do the same sum for all of the other types of waste. Now I can't simply do a copy and paste. What you could do is you could manually type in the SUMIF command and change them for each different for each different type of waste. But I'm actually going to go back and edit this function to show you how you can actually do this very simply using copy and paste. One of the problems is that if I just copy and paste this command and put it in the next column, Excel is going to automatically update these cell references. A2 is going to, well, I'll do it. Maybe I will just copy and paste that and I will put it in. So you can see what happens if I copy and paste. So I've copied cell B29 and I've just pasted it into B30. You can see why that simple copy and paste doesn't work. Because when you move down a row like this, you can see that Excel has automatically updated the cell range. It's no longer A2 to A27, but A3 to A27. And also the cell range here has also changed from C2 to C26 to C3 to C27. Now there's a very easy way of fixing that. So if I go back to the first, to the original formula, if I put a $sign in front of that 2, the $sign is incredibly important bit of Excel notation. That $sign fixes the 2. That means that Excel is not going to update that part of the cell reference. I can actually also put a $sign in front of the A as well, and that fixes both the A, both the column and the row reference. As I'm not moving across columns, I don't have to worry about fixing the column reference for this particular exercise. What I need to do is fix that row reference. So I need my dollar in front of the 2. I need my dollar in front of the 26 there. And instead of paper, which I've put in speech marks because it's text, I can simply put A29. Now this I do want to update as I copy and paste down, so I don't want any dollars there. And again, if I put a dollar in front of the C2 and a dollar in front of the 2 and then a dollar in front of the 26 and click on enter, as you can see, the number has stayed exactly the same. It hasn't made a difference to the formula. But now, if I copy and paste that into the other cells, you can see something interesting happens here. You can see that the range A2 to A26 and C2 to C26 has stayed the same for all of these. The only value that's changed is the lookup cell. So that's A29, A30, A31, A32, A33. So just by simply using those dollar signs and using a cell reference rather than the actual text, I only have to type the formula once, and then I can cut and paste. Good, just to check that our formulae are working, so I'm just going to do an auto sum there. So that's the total waste, and it's good to see that the total waste here from the summary is the same as the total waste. So I know that my sum ifs have worked correctly. Sometimes it's really good when you're playing around with data just to double check that that your formulae have worked correctly by just checking if there's consistencies between your original and your new data. Now I can very simply generate a very simple graph, which is just going to look at the distribution of waste by type of waste. So I'm just going to select my data here. I'm going to go to insert, and this again, it's going to be a very simple column graph. And as you can see, this is not much here that I need to add. I need to change the title. I need to do waste monthly waste by type. So I need to give it a chart title, and I also need to give it an axis title. I do need to name the primary axis title, and this is just going to be simply tons, okay? Because that's what the waste is messaging. You should always make sure that you have a title for your y-axis, for your vertical axis, which gives the unit of measurement. I don't have to do anything for the x-axis because all of the categories appear. So that's a very, very simple graph. But another more useful graph is actually to be able to do a stat bar. It will be really good to look at not just the total waste for each of these categories, but how the monthly waste varies between the departments. Now, how this data is organised on this spreadsheet here, I can't actually get Excel to do that very easily. So this is when I'm going to introduce you to a really useful feature in Excel, which is called pivot tables. And to do this, I'm going to select all of my data. It's important here that I select the titles here. So I do need row 1 here, which basically labels my data. And what I'm going to do, if I go into insert, I'm going to insert a pivot table. And from table range, so it's actually from the data that I already have. And then I've got a choice. So that's the table range. I've already highlighted the data, so that table range is correct. It's going from the spreadsheet waste, and it's going from cell A1 to cell 26, C26. And I'm actually going to put this in a new worksheet. It's just easier if you pivot tables into a new worksheet. So if I click on OK, I've now gone into a new worksheet. You can see I've now got a worksheet called Sheet 3 here, but there's nothing on it. What I now need to do is go around to the right-hand part of the screen and tell Excel how I want to create a table, because rather than having all of the data listed vertically, I want this data grouped. So I'll show you what I mean by this. If I choose to put type, which is one data set, I can choose to put that. If I just click on that, the first variable that I choose, Excel is going to put in the row. Now I'm going to click on department. And this time I'm going to drag department into the column. Oops, I seem to have lost. Make sure I've got type back in my rows. So I want type in my row and I want department in my column. And as you can see, what Excel has generated here is a really nice little table, okay, which has all of the types of data and all of the types of waste, and we can see how this waste is distributed across all of the different departments. It's also calculating some grand totals as well. So the next thing I need to do is actually fill in this table. And so what I need to do is I need to drag waste, the actual waste month tons, that's the actual numbers, and I need to put that in the values box over here. You don't have to worry about filters for this particular pivot table. This is a very simple pivot table. So as you can see here, what I have is a table. I've taken that long list of vertical data and I've reorganized it into a far more manageable table, which makes far more sense. I can look at how the electrical waste varies across different departments, and I can also easily look down each department to see how the amount of waste each department produces varies by the type. And we can see some important differences, not surprisingly, when we look at electrical waste. Computing generates more electrical waste than does the canteen, but maybe not surprising when I look at organic waste, it's the canteen that generates most of the organic waste, and very little in computing, so nothing too surprising here. So the next thing I can do is I'm just going to select the data. I'm not going to bother with selecting the grand total. Let's make a graph about this. I'm going to go to Insert again, and I'm going to go back to 2D columns, and I'm just going to do a very simple clustered bar. Okay, I prefer clustered bars to stack bars, tend to find that they can be a little bit more useful. And you can see here that I've got, I'm looking here at a graph where I've got the type of waste, and each of these color bars refers to a particular department. We can, just to show you how we do this, if I go back to design, I can switch the row columns. So you can sometimes thinking, what's the best way to show this? Is it best to show the waste by departments within type, or is it type within departments? I think this makes more sense, but very easy to switch it. If I switch it, now you can see the departments here, and I'm looking at the type of waste by department. I actually think this makes more sense. I think it makes more sense to see how the waste varies between the departments. And then we can go and we can add our elements. We can have our axes titles. So obviously we need to have a primary vertical. Oops, I seem to have clicked on the wrong thing there. So I need to have my primary vertical. This time I want my axes titles, primary vertical. Got that working now, got the primary vertical in there, so I just want to turn that into tons. Okay, and then I also need to add a chart title. I can have that I can have that above the chart, and then I can have monthly waste by, oops, look at spelled out waste, by type and department. Okay. So I've got a title in there, and I can also change the colours around. You can remove the grid lines. Also, just realised I'd managed to remove the vertical axis, and I do want a vertical axis. So that's how we can generate a clustered bar chart, and how we use the pivot table to turn data that's not presented in a very useful way. So that's a little bit of an introduction to some of the key features of graphs, pivot tables, and SUMIFs in Excel.